Hi, thanks for taking time out of your day for a coffee break with us. My name is Regina. I'm a mental health therapist with North Range Behavioral Program working in our adult recovery program. And today we're going to talk about food, mood, and loving our bodies. So grab yourself a cup of coffee and join me. I know that this might be kind of a heavy topic for some of us, like talking about food, body image, how we feel about ourselves can be pretty loaded. So if you're not in the headspace for this right now, feel free to keep on scrolling through, and we would love to have you back for our next coffee with a counselor. And if this is what you want to focus on this morning, thanks for coming. Just a heads up, I know this is a difficult topic for a lot of us, so if this is something that you struggle with, know that you're not alone, that a lot of us have some mixed feelings about our body, about the way we eat, all those kind of things. No judgment here, and I think if I want you to take any message away from today, it's that loving yourself and honoring yourself is a process and a journey, and we all need to give ourselves a little bit of forgiveness and grace sometimes. So, with that said, some things this talk is not about today is I'm not going to teach you some tricks to lose so many pounds, or we're not going to talk about what foods to eat or not to eat. Instead, we're going to talk about some ways to recenter your eating and do so in a mindful way that really honors what your body needs and honors your health. So with that, one of the first things I want to talk about is the reasons that we eat. So obviously, kind of the basic one is because biologically we have to. We need fuel for our body so that it can keep going forward. It can do things during the day. It can do all sorts of good stuff. So there's that biological need, and there's a lot of other reasons that we eat. So for some of us, it might look like there's some social needs behind it. Giving other people food, making a meal for someone, bringing them chicken noodle soup when they're sick is a way that we show that we care about each other. We connect with people. We go out to when we used to be able to go out to restaurants, go out to dinner for dates, things like that. There's also a little celebratory aspect to a lot of food, of having cake for someone's birthday or retirement party. And then there's also some emotional aspects to eating. So for example, when we're feeling stressed out or tired, we might choose to eat a food that we find really comforting, or when we're feeling bored, we might reach for something to kind of liven up our moods. So with all that in mind, one of the really helpful tools that I like to encourage people to use, and I use myself, is a way to kind of measure how we're feeling physically in terms of our hunger. And so we call this a hunger satiety scale. And on one end, we have our 10, which is you are feeling super, super full. That is, maybe you're starting to feel uncomfortably full. You're feeling like your clothes aren't feeling right. Your stomach is feeling a little distended, all that kind of stuff. And then on the other side, we have our 1. And that is where you're feeling so, so hungry that maybe you feel like you're about to pass out. Your stomach is grumbling, making all sorts of noises. Other people are maybe starting to notice your stomach is making noises. And so one thing we encourage people to do is, using that hunger satiety scale, is ask yourself before you start eating, where am I at? Am I, down at this 1 where I am absolutely famished and starving and I need to eat right now or I might pass out? Or am I up at the 10 where, I am really, really full and maybe I'm eating for some other emotional reasons besides that physical need, which is totally sometimes the thing that we need to do. Sometimes we eat for, like I said, various reasons. So checking in with yourself about where are you at physically before starting a meal? And then check in with yourself at the end of the meal. Where are you at on that scale? Are you still feeling like you're really down at the low end where you're feeling still pretty hungry and don't feel like you were really satiated at all? Or are you maybe more up towards that top? Are you feeling like, oh, this is almost like a big Thanksgiving dinner and you're starting to feel uncomfortable, or feel like maybe you did overeat in a way that doesn't feel like it's honoring your body? So you might start to notice some patterns. Again, no judgment. There's no wrong or right way with this kind of stuff. But you might start to notice, okay, when I get really busy, maybe a lot of times when I'm eating, I'm down at a 1 or a 2 and I'm feeling really, really hungry, and then I don't know what I want to eat. I go into the fridge and I just kind of grab anything, and it doesn't feel like a very enjoyable meal. Or when I'm down at that number, then a lot of times I end up eating to an 8 or a 9 or a 10 and eating up really, really high to the point where I'm starting to feel really uncomfortable. So starting to notice patterns of what feels good for you with that hunger satiety scale, of if you are one of those people who maybe you start eating more at a 3 or a 4 when you're starting to get hungry, but you're not up to like that 1 or a 2 yet, then maybe that's a way that you feel like, okay, I eat this amount now, and then I get up to maybe like a 6 or a 7 and I feel pretty comfortable. I feel decently full, but I don't feel uncomfortable. I don't feel like I need to take a nap right after eating. So noticing for yourself what works in terms of when you choose to eat and what kind of patterns work for you is a really important way for us to kind of reconnect with our bodies. Again, easier said than done. This is a lot of stuff that we kind of have to retrain our minds. A lot of us are really used to you eat because it's the time to eat. It is your lunch hour, or, you know, dinner is on the table, or your friends are going out to get something and that's the time that you eat. And so instead of using those external cues, starting to look internally can be a little tricky for us. Some of us might even notice we don't really have a lot of internal cues about when we were hungry until we're down at like that one point. I keep using the wrong hands because I'm in a mirror image. When we're down at the 1, that is when we kind of maybe notice like, oh, I actually have some physical symptoms of wanting to eat, that's where my stomach is grumbly, that's where I feel hungry. And starting to tune in a little bit more earlier and noticing, okay, what does it look like when we're at more of like a 3 or a 4 and we're starting to feel just a little bit hungry, but not super, super hungry. That's a way of us kind of retraining and focusing in on more what our body needs. Another thing that we find really helpful and we really like to encourage people along the lines of eating is what we call mindful eating. And of course, you probably all have heard about mindfulness. I know that is the big buzzword in therapy and mental health and just health in general right now. And really, it's kind of a nice fancy way of saying being present and really taking in our experiences and being more involved in our lives. So a lot of times when we're eating, we are doing so like we are hammering out some emails to other people and we're sitting at our desk or in front of our laptop doing that. Maybe we have the TV on and we're watching something, or we're just kind of playing on our phones as we're eating. And so we find that that is a easy way to fall into not really being connected with our meals and being really present. And so mindful eating is a way to start to refocus that. And there's lots of ways to do it. The one that I really like is using those 5 senses. So all that fun stuff you learned back in grade school. And I'm going to demonstrate it for you now. So if you have a cup of coffee, if you're taking a break like me, feel free to grab that out. You can come along on this journey with me. If you have a snack with you, this also works really great. Mindful eating, we can do it with pretty much anything you can eat or drink. It can be like, I have a cup of tea. It might be that you have something like you have a granola bar, a cookie, an apple, a banana, a piece of chocolate, whatever it is. It could be a Burger King sandwich. Whatever that you have in front of you works good for this stuff. And so we start by using our senses. Probably the most obvious one is using our sense of sight and looking at our food. So for example, got my cup of tea here. This is, if I remember right, I think it was strawberry pomegranate. So it's kind of a little bit pink, a little bit purple. Kind of can't really tell. You probably can't really tell out there either when I'm forcing it to you. Tea bag in there, pretty full. Sometimes tea bags have the nice little tag that tells you something cute. Mine just has a little sign. But it might be like if you have an apple in front of you, looking at what kind of color is it? You know, it's not just a solid red on an apple. There might be some speckles. There might be some different designs. Is there any indents? Like if you have a cookie in front of you, are there chips in it? You know, what parts are more flat? What parts are more rough? And just really getting into it. How would you describe the color of what you're eating? Just getting all those little minute details so that you're really in tune with that stuff. The next one could be smell. So for instance, my tea does have a little bit of a strawberry pomegranate. It's tea, so it's not the most strong smell of that, but I can definitely sense some of that stuff. And as we probably know, like smell is such a big part of how we enjoy food. You probably remember doing that experiment when you were younger, blindfolding yourself and taking a drink of orange juice, or holding your nose and taking a drink of orange juice, and that it kind of doesn't really taste like orange juice when you can't smell it. We also, for a lot of us, smell is a really strong part of calming us down and might bring up some really strong memories of, I know for myself, like the smell of vanilla reminds me of like baking cookies when I was younger, and instantly it was weird. Sorry about that. And so for myself, that might be something that, you know, choosing something that's that sweet, warm smell might make me feel safe and cozy. So smell whatever you have in front of you, take a few breaths of that in, just really connect with it. And then of course, obviously taste is a really big part of food. probably the most easy one to jump to. And so taste can be a lot of things. Like tea is a little bit more mild, like there's kind of a more watery taste to that. Try to describe the taste of the thing that you're eating in as detailed way as possible. Imagine you're writing a novel and you want like a few sentences about what the thing tastes like. You know, is it sweet? Is it salty? Is it something, there's kind of a bitterness to it? Like if you're having a piece of dark chocolate, is there some bitterness? Is there, you know, like with mine, there's a little bit of that strawberry pomegranate taste to it, but it is still pretty mild. So connecting with that kind of stuff. Some other ones that we think of that we might not really think of when we think about eating food. So for instance, sound. Like you probably a lot of times, unless you're eating like a really crunchy bunch of potato chips, not really noticing the sound of biting down on something. Or especially with a drink, you might not be like, oh, I'm kind of gurgling and I'm drinking things and stuff like that. So connecting with that stuff, like what does it sound like when I drink down my tea? Or, you know, if you have like a cookie or a granola bar in front of you, I crack it in half. What does that sound like? You know, also gives you some visuals of those crumbs and then some texture and things like that. What does it sound like when I bite into my apple? How would I describe that kind of noise? And then moving into texture, which can be both before you eat the thing or as it's in your mouth. I know, really detailed stuff you probably don't think about, but mindful eating is all about reconnecting ourselves. So for instance, mine, I describe it as obviously liquidy. It's kind of medium warm. I was a little worried when I drank it that it might have been really hot and burnt my mouth, but it didn't. So it might be something about the temperature of what you're drinking or eating. You might notice like, again, like a granola bar, kind of rough. You have to chew it a few more times. There's some resistance when you chew it there. So just really reconnecting in with those kind of things. So focusing on that stuff down and really slowing yourself down. This is hard stuff. Like it's pretty normal to notice if you're starting mindful eating for the first time that you get distracted during it, or you'll take a few bites and you'll be really in tune with like the sound of it and the taste of it and smell and everything, and then your mind starts to wander, or you pull out your phone, or you know something goes else on and you're like, oh, I need to do that when I get back to work. So it's something that all of us, it's a journey about being more connected. And again, self-forgiveness is the name of the game here. Letting ourselves be where we're at and learning with what we're learning. So feel free to practice this stuff throughout the day. Notice if, you know, checking in with yourself of where you are on that hunger satiety scale, and then also noticing how you are when you're mindful, if that kind of helps you slow down. So taking that nice break for yourself and honoring where you're at with food. So I know, thanks for joining me. I think that's probably the big stuff that I have today. If you're interested in this topic and want to learn more, some recommendations for resources that I suggest is I really like this mindful eating workbook, and you can find this pretty much anywhere. I got it at Barnes & Noble. I'm sure you can find it on Amazon. So this is a really great, it talks more about mindful eating as well as that hunger satiety thing, as well as a lot of just around body acceptance and learning to love your body and who you are and appreciating it and taking good care of it, even if it feels like sometimes the body that society doesn't want you to have. I also really like the Food Psych podcast, if you're interested in that. It's ran by a registered dietitian and gets into a lot of kind of interesting and even kind of challenging stuff about the way we take care of our bodies and how we feel about bodies and food and all these kind of things. So I recommend both of those if you want to learn a little bit more and seek some of this stuff out. So thanks for taking a break with us today. Thanks again for joining us. We hope to see you at our next coffee break soon. And in the meantime, take care of yourself, take care of each other, and remember that we're here to help. So if you or someone you know is experiencing a behavioral health emergency, please call our crisis line at 970-347-2120. We also have a walk-in crisis center at 928 12th Street in Greeley. Or you can text TALK to 38255. We also just opened up a warm line if you just need to talk to somebody, and that phone number is 970-347-2359. Take care and have a wonderful day.